Good evening. I'd like to call our business meeting to order and ask the treasurer to call the roll.
President Baker.
Present.
Mr. Brown.
Here.
Vice President Cole.
Here.
Ms. Gibbs. Mr. Ragland.
Present.
Ms. Reyes.
Here.
Ms. Adair.
Present.
You have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. We have some special guests with us tonight from Upward Bound, and I'm going to ask two of their number to join us at the podium, Deja Moore and Christopher Blewett. I'm going to ask them to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, so I'll ask all of you to be upstanding.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I will briefly read through the agenda, just so we all know the work before us this evening. After we adopt the agenda, we will do special recognition of Ohio State Upward Bound students and their director, after which we will hear public testimony, after which we will hear from the three direct reports, our superintendent, our treasurer, and our internal auditor. We will then take up our consent agenda, after which we will hear announcements from board members and points of pride, after which we will adjourn into executive session. Is there a motion that we adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
Ms. Adair.
Yes.
President Baker.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Vice President Cole.
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs. Oops, my apologies. Mr. Ragland.
Yes.
Ms. Reyes.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Now I'd like to call on Dr. Commodore. Would you mind coming up to the podium and bring along with you whoever you'd like? And some of you may remember Dr. Commodore. She was a principal and also ran VCAP, as I recall.
I did.
Okay, very good. And I'll
Yes, I
ask
did.
you to introduce your colleagues and your students. And thank you very much for being here this evening.
Thank you so much for having us. Mr. Baker, I'd like to introduce to you students from The Ohio State University's Upward Bound, Trio Upward Bound program. These students all attend Columbus City Schools, which is one of the reasons why I was attracted to that program. After my tenure here in Columbus City Schools, it gave me the opportunity to continue my work with underrepresented youth, to provide them with college access and opportunities that they otherwise would not have. Dr. Carter Womack is working with me this school year, providing leadership development opportunities for our students, and we really appreciate him. They have taken into that fold seriously the opportunity to become leaders in their building. That is our goal. All of them will not graduate this year. We do have 5 graduates, Columbus City Schools. I believe that 2 are from COS. LaVon is from the downtown high school. Michael goes to South. And then we have one more. Help me. So I will get there. So, but anyway, the point is that our kids are succeeding, and I am glad to be able to help them get to this next step in education. Dr. Womack?
Thank you, Dr. Commodore. Again, my name is Carter D. Womack, and the program that we're working with Dr. Commodore and the students is called the Junior Executive Development Program, identifying and providing our students the opportunity for leadership development, life skill training, and more importantly, self-leadership development. And the exposure of our students to this body is one of those field experiences that we offer for the students as a part of the Junior Executive Development Program. It's a 6-month program in partnership with The Ohio State University and Dr. Commodore's program, and we're glad to have an opportunity, Dr. Commodore, to work with you and the students. And welcome, Ms. Dixon, to Columbus.
Thank you.
Very much. And might we ask each student to just briefly say his or her name and the school that he or she attends?
I'm Levon Owens. I go to Columbus Downtown High School. I'm a senior and I'm ready to graduate.
I heard that.
My name is Kabir Abdullahi. I go to Columbus Alternative High School. I'm a sophomore, and I'm right with them, but just 2 more years.
My name is Dominique Wood Stewart. Well, I don't go to a Columbus City school no more. I used to go to South High School, but now I attend Harvest Prep, and I'm a sophomore.
My name is Deja Moore. I go to South High School, and I'm a junior.
My name is Madison Gonzalez. I attend Fort Hays High School and Centennial High School, and I am a junior in high school.
My name is Christopher Blewett. I'm a junior this year, and my home high school is Walnut Ridge, but I'm attending Bishop Harley right now.
I just want to say that we are continually seeking young people in Columbus City Schools to join our TRIO Upward Bound program. I want to be able to provide as many opportunities to as many students as we can. Thank you.
Very good. And Dr. Commodore, yes. I know attending a meeting like this is a requirement, and so that you have photographic proof, I'll ask everyone to come up to right here and we'll take a photograph.
We can do that.
Just don't trip. Thank you, Dr. Commodore. Thank you, Dr. Womack, for bringing those, I was going to say future leaders, but current and future leaders, because these students are already leaders in their school settings. Colleagues, any questions or comments? Mr. Ragland.
Yes. Thank you, President Baker. I'd like to ask Dr. Womack to come back. My announcement for this evening was literally going to be his Bold Leadership Conference this weekend, and he could give that announcement much better
Himself.
than I can. If Dr. Womack would come back and please give us the information on the Bold Leadership Conference that's going to take place at the Convention Center. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Board Member Ragland. My company, Leadership at its Best, we focus on student leadership development, life skill training with an emphasis on African American males. So we're engaged in doing work at Champion Middle School with with the 6th grade and 7th grade boys at Champion Middle School, the Student Leadership Council. We annually host a conference that's entitled Bold, with an emphasis on African American and boys of color, grades 5 through 12. And the conference is on Saturday, April the 27th, hosted at the Columbus Convention Center, starting at 9 o'clock with registration, light breakfast, games, and 3 rotating workshops. Among our sponsors this year, we are pleased to announce Fifth Third Bank, the military, Boy Scouts of America, and this year the Secret Service of Washington, D.C. is going to be coming to participate because they want to reach our boys at early ages. We have the police department, fire department, all going to be represented, engaging African American boys grades 5 through 12 on Saturday. You're all invited to come, get involved, engage, shake hands with our young men, and we're going to be launching our Bold Game Changer group of men interested in engaging with our young men on an ongoing basis. So we're excited to be able to host again the bowl conference in Columbus. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
Dr.
President
Womack.
Becker.
Any other comments, colleagues? Again, thank you all for being here this evening, and I'll tell you, don't feel obligated to stay for the whole meeting. You're more than welcome, but if you need to be elsewhere, we understand. You probably have homework, don't you? Let's give them one more round of applause. Thank you very much. Let's move on then to our next agenda item, which is public comment. We do have 3 speakers signed up this evening, and so when I call your name and state the topic and board action requested, please approach the podium. You'll have 4 minutes to address the board. You'll see a timer up on the screen, and that will tell you when you need to conclude your comments. First speaker, Nana Watson. Topic, agenda item 12.4, board action, answer questions about item 12.4. President Watson, good evening.
President Baker and members of the board and Superintendent Dixon. I'm going to be very brief. I want to talk about agenda item 12.4, $175,000 to be spent with the convention center on an activity, I believe next school year. I understand that this is a federal grant. I don't have a copy of that grant, but I would like for someone to share with the NAACP what that grant was for.
Conclude your comments?
No.
Okay.
Oh, you want me to keep going?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's one request. I thought you were going to answer. I was told that it was a federal grant. We need to know about that. I'd like to have some documentation. And if you have this event, will you be pursuing corporate sponsorship? You've got 9,000 employees coming. How is that going to work? How are you going to do breakout rooms for 9,000? Because I think it's a rah-rah to pump the 9,000 employees, and that's fine. I also want to know, I learned from the convention center that they outsource businesses. I want to know, how will you ensure that black businesses get a piece of this $175,000? Thank you.
President Watson, and Madam Superintendent, would you like to plan to follow up with President Watson to answer her questions? Okay, thank you very much.
So wait a minute, I'm going to get a follow-up. I can't get it now. Because the other question that I have is, would you do this differently? And did you have input into this event? Or was it here when you got here?
There are 2 events that you're speaking to. The Reimagine Me event, I think this is in this is the third year for the Reimagine Me conference. And if I could speak to the title funds that are being used, those are actually federal funds, and they're earmarked for improving teacher quality and leader quality. So those funds can only be used for professional development. The second part of your question, will we pursue corporate sponsors? We have pursued sponsorships, and Ohio State University has said that they would help sponsor us for that. So the 2 events that make up that dollar amount that you're speaking of, it's from our Title IIA, Improving Teacher Quality. One is for a 2-day conference. It is the Reimagine Me conference that is for professional development for over 1,800 staff members. Last year, we put the conference on, and because we did not have a venue large enough for 1,800, our elementary staff was at Fort Hays and Ames, and our secondary staff was housed at Afrocentric Early College. The feedback that we received from our administrators and teachers is that they would like to be in one location, and so that's how we came up on the convention center. I do want to be clear that the convention center wasn't our first choice. We actually looked at some other venues, but not many of those venues had the capacity to do what we needed it to do. So that is June 3rd and 4th. Now, the event on August 21st, that is the convocation for all 9,000 employees. And yes, there is room for breakouts for each one of the sections of employees. So that will start with a visioning and covering our 5-year strategic plan so that everyone in every location can hear the same message at the same time. We've even worked in time for our directors, building administrators, executive directors, an opportunity for them to unpack the vision of the superintendent and the expectations moving forward and our alignment with our 5-year strategic plan.
That's good. President Baker, I do need a meeting with someone who is over this because I'm troubled by this. I need to know if you're going to use the convention center, and if the convention center outsources some of their products, goods, and services, NAACP wants to know, do you have a commitment to make sure that black businesses get some of the $175,000?
Okay, very good. So
that's a yes, you'll do that?
yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Yep. I'll ask the superintendent to follow up with you in the next,
We have a meeting scheduled.
Yeah, we do.
okay.
All right,
perfect.
thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Nice to see
Thank
you. All right, our second any questions, clarifying questions, colleagues? Our second speaker, Leighton Hines, topic, investigate an administrator. Board action requested, investigate the behavior of the administrator and be compensated for my time. Mr. Hines, good evening.
Good evening. I won't take up 4 minutes, I don't think. Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Hark, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Dixon. I just lost my brother this morning, so forgive me if I kind of pause. I was former family ambassador to thus said school I'm not supposed to mention between September and February. I logged 226 hours. 226 hours. I was instructed between the other person whose name is down as a family ambassador and the administrator on what to do. I did my job. We parted ways. No problem. After time was submitted, it became a problem. The problem in itself, there was a question of the time that I put down. Well, I don't volunteer 226 hours. I'm retired, but I don't volunteer that kind of time. And it came into question, and still being brought up as an issue because I have talked to I don't know how many people for 6 weeks and have gotten a runaround. The runaround, which is why I'm here. I spoke to the state. They told me to come before the board, which I am now, to see if I could get any kind of resolution to what's going on. I've been compensated for 108 hours, but there's still 1,860 hours still out there. I would like to be compensated. I have every email, all the documentation that anybody who would like to investigate this, feel free to do so. As a parent, my son goes to the school. He's had problems with kids teasing him, things of that nature, saying, oh, your dad got fired and things of that nature. Who says that around kids? When we're talking about leadership, leadership shouldn't exude throwing parents under the bus, making up false accusations and things of that nature. I have those emails too. I respect school system, definitely I do. But I refuse to have my son be bullied, talked to any kind of way by the students. I refuse to have him singled out because there's a problem with myself and the administrator. Talk to me, I'm an adult. He's only 8 years old, he's right here. I want resolution. I would like that. I mean, I am a parent. And if I'm not mistaken, parents are the backbone of every school district. I welcome any questions that anybody might have. I mean, like I said, I'm not going to take up too much of your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. Colleagues, any clarifying questions? for the speaker. Madam Superintendent, can I ask that you designate someone to follow up with Mr. Hines?
Okay.
Okay, all right, all right. Thank you very much, Mr. Hines. Expect follow-up very shortly.
Okay.
Thank you for being here this evening. We appreciate it. All right, let's move on to our third and final speaker, Tamara Stith. And topic, introducing myself and my children's book. Board action requested, consider my children's book to be given to children between kindergarten and third grade. Ms. Stith, good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome.
And hello, thank you. To President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bohorg, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Talisa Dixon. Again, my name is Tamara, and I am the author of Jediah's Super Lemonade Stand. My book was totally inspired by my son, who came home from camp one day and said he wanted to start his own business because he had learned that he can earn his own money by having a lemonade stand. So from that point, my book, it shares the steps that it took for Jediah and I to start his business. I also incorporated some fun activities for the students to enjoy. I focused on sight words for children kindergarten to third grade. However, it's enjoyable for all. Being a volunteer with Columbus City Schools for the past 3 years, working with the at-risk seniors to help ensure their graduation, most of them do not have a college plan, and they feel as if they have no alternative but to work a job somewhere, as they quote. I understand the importance to introduce our youth to entrepreneurship as early as possible, and give them the mindset to be creators and determine their own financial wealth. It is proven that if one can change their family's economic situation, that it will strengthen neighborhoods and build stronger communities. I read an article once in Forbes magazine, and it talked about entrepreneurship and how it should be a part of the curriculum for educators, and that it is a learned skill and it should be taught early. Right now, with the four major social media platforms, they were all developed by people between 20 and 26. So I do understand we do have to get them while they're young. Also, am coming to you today, again, to share my book and hopefully build a partnership that will enable me to go into the schools, read and share my book with your students. Yes, it is a simple concept of having a lemonade stand, but from that, it can encourage that student to develop a product that can go into major grocery stores. It can also bring about a book idea that will be a national bestseller. Amen. As I close, I just leave you with one of my favorite quotes from Les Brown. You do not have to be great to start, but you do have to start to be great. Okay? So thank you again for your time. Thank you for listening. And I would like to say I have a meeting set up with Miss Sandy Donald and her staff tomorrow morning to further the conversation. Okay.
Very good.
right.
Thank you, Ms. Stith. Any questions, clarifying questions from board members? Board Member Ragland?
Yes, thank you, President Baker. I am interested in knowing if we do have an entrepreneurship aspect within our curriculum already. Is that something that's going on, and what schools do we currently have that in motion right now? Forgive me for being so new, but
No,
you bring about a great question.
That is a good question. Timing is the only issue of the question. And so what I'll ask is that Superintendent ask someone to follow up specifically with Mr. Ragland after the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if there are no other questions, clarifying questions from Ms. Stith, thank you very much for being here
Okay,
this
thank you.
evening. Yeah. And that is our final speaker for the evening. And let's move on then to our next subject, which is our Superintendent's Report. Madam Superintendent, have you a report for the board this evening?
Yes, President Baker and members of the board, taken from your positive feedback I received at our last meeting, we've structured tonight's report in a similar fashion. Our report on 5 topics I think are most important for you to hear. And I will attempt to be concise in my comments, but also have added information and staff ready to answer any of your follow-up questions. So let me begin with the power of partnerships in our district. I've said before that Columbus City Schools is fortunate to have an extensive number of nonprofit and public partners who support our students and their families. These partners believe in our mission, and we must work to align their efforts to meet the goals and outcomes we're looking to achieve. One of our district's strongest partners is I Know I Can, who graciously hosted an event last night for me to meet many of their supporters. For 3 decades, this organization has proven that when caring people believe in the abilities of our young people to reach higher, great results can and do happen. We look forward to continuing our partnership with I Know I Can, to have their staff in all of our high schools, to help students apply for college and earn scholarships. On top of that, I Know I Can has provided millions of dollars in scholarships for our graduates. Thanks to our board members for joining me at the event, and a special thanks to Franklin County Commissioner Marilyn Brown for offering a special resolution supporting our work. Another important partner is City Year Columbus, which recently hosted its annual Red Jacket Ball. For almost 25 years, City Year members have had a positive impact on our students. Across 7 of our schools, we have a team of about 60 City Year members deployed, combining for nearly 13,000 hours of tutoring, attendance, behavior, and English and math coursework. President Baker and Board Member Gibbs now have their own City Year Red Jacket to wear proudly. Another partner is the Franklin County Children's Services recognizing Child Abuse Prevention Week, with a special breakfast that also included scholarships to 3 of our students. Michaela Norton from Eastmore Academy plans to pursue a degree in pediatric surgery. Kasim Norton, also from Eastmore, plans to become a cybersecurity specialist. And James Kemp from South plans to pursue a nursing degree. The scholarships are the result of a long-standing partnership between Children's Services and the United Negro College Fund and general donors to the Children's Fund. One more powerful partnership to spotlight, this one fueled by former educators in the district. What started as a simple lunch back in 1987 has grown into the Helen Jenkins Davis Lunch Bunch Scholarships. Over the years, the group has awarded scholarships to more than 134 graduating seniors, including 6 more this year. The featured speaker was our West High School Assistant Principal, Ty Canute. He was awarded the Helen Jenkins Davis Scholarship back in 2004 when he graduated from Independence. 4 very powerful partnerships that truly support students and our mission. So let me move to our second topic tonight, and that's to continue outreach as part of my 100-day plan. These past 2 weeks have included some very insightful conversations. First, with a group of bright and talented students from Columbus Alternative High School. Some time was spent about their infrastructure needs and upcoming investments they were soon making, but also made sure to spend some time seeing their academics in action. Great teachers know how to engage students, no matter if they're high-performing schools or not. And I was glad to see our students that were continuing to engage in learning. Engagement has also been a part of the conversation at my recent principal meetings. I've been able to meet with all of our high school and middle school principals and about 1/3 of our elementary principals. And one message I've heard a few times is about the need for more cross-alignment through feeder patterns, making sure the skills needed to be successful in high school and being taught in the middle school, and the same down to elementary school. We need our education plans to be more aligned and more effective so we don't have to reteach elementary lessons again in the middle school and repeat anything in high school. And we'll conclude the principals' meetings after spring break. I've also had the chance to share our message and mission with Angela Ann and Pete Scalia, I think it's on the TV morning news. They both wanted to know how my first 100 days on the job was going, and they wanted to hear about those plans we have to change the narrative about the success here in Columbus City Schools. I also had my first international partner meeting with a representative of Short Edition. So you know the kiosk is upstairs, so they're a French company behind the automated short story kiosks, like the one in the lobby. As you know, we were the first K-12 district in the world to have these dispensers, but the company has now grown to serve several schools and universities, including Harvard, Penn State, Carnegie Mellon, and Temple. And we'll soon hope to put one of these short story kiosks at Nationwide Children's Hospital and one at John Glenn Airport. And finally, I've had good conversations at the State House, with Ohio State House, including an insightful conversation with Ohio Senator Peggy Lehner. She is the chair of the Senate Education Committee, and I think she would be a good ally as we try to lobby for our district's best interests, especially on the topics such as graduation requirements, fair funding, and school district accountability. Also at the State House, the voice of the Ohio 8 was delivered by Cleveland Superintendent Eric Gordon as he testified on the budget bill and the proposals by the governor and the Cupp-Patterson plan. In both plans, Columbus still does not receive the adequate level of funding for all of our students. The cap on funding still shortchanges our district, and the proposal phase in to eliminate. It goes on into 2024 at the earliest. So we still have strong advocacy to make sure that we get the proper funding for our school district. So the next topic, I want to take a moment to celebrate student achievement. And we can't recognize every achievement, but when possible, we should celebrate a few of them, including the winners of our district 11th annual Poetry Slam. 6 high schools and 5 middle schools competed Saturday, April 13th at the 11th annual City Poetry Slam. Winning schools and individual poets received medals and trophies, and the top of the high school poet received $350 in scholarships. Eastmore Academy took first place, followed by Centennial. And the top high school poet the scholarship recipient was Nana Ishan of Eastmore. And the middle school level, Indianola was first, followed by Ridgeview. Also, thanks to board member Adair, we can also take some time to celebrate the students who represented the district in the 20th annual statewide MLK Oratorical contest. So we had a student from, I think it's Adania Balquist of Clinton Elementary took first place in intermediate division. I think it's Alea Bella of Columbus Gifted Academy was first place in the junior division. And then we had Fort Hays, who had senior Peyton Patrick took first place in the senior division. So thanks again for attending that on our behalf. And we also should pause to recognize some staff members who were recognized as some of the best in the state. The Ohio Alliance of Black School Educators recently recognized 3 of our administrators as some of the best in Ohio. Unfortunately, that event was the same night that we were at the Red Jacket Ball. So we didn't have any district presence at this event, board members, because we had this other conflict. Oakmont Elementary Principal, Shawana McFadden, Georgian Heights Principal, Nikita Smoot, and Avalon Principal, Linnell Taylor were all recipients of the 2019 Principal of the Year Award. As part of the Appreciation and Recognition Banquet Program, each administrator also chose an outstanding student from their school to be honored by the Alliance, reinforcing the idea that when school staff are successful at their jobs, our students benefit most. In our historic Stuff the Backpack initiative that provided 50,000 free backpacks and school supplies, enough for everyone in Columbus City Schools on the first day of classes last year, earned our district partners at the NBC4 a special state award. They were joined by our Executive Director of Strategic Communications, Scott Varner, to receive the 2019 Friend of Education Award in Ohio, the Ohio School Public Relations Association. So here's some good news. NBC4 has committed to Stuff the Backpack initiative again this year with another 50,000 backpacks. It's good, yes. So finally, I want to take the time to recognize 2 more events that I attended where the focus was truly on empowering our students for future success. And it was, the first was at the She Can Make a Difference Day down in German Village, put together by some amazing young women from CAS. But more than 130 students took part in this event, the second year of this event. And all the activities, it was amazing. They had a girl DJ, only girl music, only get renders. It was all about girls. The activities and discussions were designed to empower girls and young women so they can learn about the limitless opportunities for all women in an engaging community. Bold, beautiful, smart, strong. This event was put on by some truly unstoppable role models. And perhaps just as empowering was the Sankofa celebration at Columbus Afrocentric. There are few people better at giving a tour at Columbus Afrocentric campus than the man whose vision made it possible. Thank you to Mr. Tennant for sharing the story behind the historic building and the program. The annual Sankofa event has become a celebration of education and the champions in our community who are ready to help support our students. The evening reinforces that through education, our young people form a deeper understanding and appreciation of the world around them. To see its rich history, its diverse cultures, and its requirement that every person has an obligation to contribute to the common good if we are to have a just and prosperous community. Thank you to the Afrocentric staff for a great night and for teaching the message of Sankofa, to reach back and gather the best of what our past has to teach our young students, and then put them on a pathway of success, focus forward, and filled with promise of tomorrow. And with that, President Baker, I conclude my report.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Colleagues, any questions for the superintendent on her report? Mr. Vice President?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Dixon, we are going through our testing phase at this point. Can you talk just a little bit about what's happening? What's the sense of student and staff morale? Where are we with regards to testing at this point for our students?
Well, we're still testing. With hopes that our students perform well. My beliefs about our organization shutting down for testing. So I have my personal beliefs that our students have so much potential, and that school districts around this state are shutting their doors for a month so that we can have our kids testing for one period of time, and then our schools are measured based on that. I don't think that's right, but we have to adhere to that. So it's happening, and we hope our students master the content from those tests. But the bigger piece is the advocacy that we have in the State House, that they need to change that measure, right? Our students in our schools cannot be measured by one point of time. We need multiple measurements that allow our students to demonstrate mastery in multiple ways.
Thank you so much for connecting those dots. Thank you.
Hear, hear. Well said. Any other questions for the superintendent on her report? Thank you very much, Madam Superintendent. Let's move on then to our internal auditor. Madam Internal Auditor, would you like to present your report to the board?
Yes. Let's see. Give me a second here. There we go. President Baker, Vice President Coe, members of the board. This is a high-level report of activity that's going on in the Office of Internal Audit. It was first presented to Audit and Accountability at your March 26th meeting, and I wanted to just have the opportunity to share with you what's going on in the department. A little hard to see, sorry about that. What this first page is showing is a very high-level dashboard of the engagement types in the department and the status of each of those engagements. So we have 3 types of engagements that we work on: the audits, the follow-up activity, and special projects. And you can look across and see the status that any of these engagements are in. So are we in the field work phase? Have we issued the report? Are the engagements scheduled as, or I'm sorry, are the engagements remaining as scheduled? And then you get the total. So as far as example, if you wanted to know how many audit reports we have issued, you can just go over to that column and see we've issued 3 reports. The next page, if you wanted to get more information, it will show you exactly the audit names and the status. So once again, for example, if you wanted to know how we are doing on the textbook audit, the textbook follow-up, you will go down to job number 7, and you can see that that audit has not started yet. If you wanted to see what we have issued, you can go to item number 9 and see that report for the 3rd grade reading guarantee has been issued. Number 11, the audit over transportation, the report has been issued. And number 17, the audit over the alternative learning VCAP has been issued. So this just gives you a snapshot of the status of all the engagements that we had planned for the year and where we are. This next chart only deals with engagements that we are actually working on. So if someone had a question about 3rd from the bottom, where we stand as far as our work plan, you can see that the planning and scoping has been done, and a box with a half mark in it indicates that we are someplace in the field work phase. Once again, if you want to see what reports have been issued, if all the blocks are solid across all boxes, that means that these reports have been issued. These audits have been issued. The next section gives a real brief overview of items that have been added to the work plan or items that have been deleted to the work plan. So as I think I highlighted last meeting, we have added an engagement to do some work in the WCBE area, but because of the resources needed to perform that work, we're having to delay a job dealing with revenue and accounts receivable. It will still be done, it just won't be completed in the time frame that we had initially planned. This next slide here is a work in progress. At the conclusion of every audit, we typically will issue recommendations, and then the management will arrive at corrective action plans to address those recommendations. So what I'm showing here is at the beginning of, basically the beginning of March, where we stood as far as the open issues, any changes that happened between the month of March, whether something new came on as a result of the audits that we reported, or if something came off because we've done some follow-up and have determined that, yes, these issues can be closed now, and then what's currently open. The column 2 be determined, we have reached out to management to try to get a much better number as far as if there's something that's open that we just are not aware of, that we can come out and do some work to actually have a much better number to provide to the audit committee and to the board at our next meeting. So we are gathering that information, that's why it says to be determined. This next slide gives an overview of activities that aren't engagements, but they do take time to complete. So there's sometimes we're asked to do advisory services. We presented our budget to the Finance and Appropriations Committee. We've done some work with the Auditor of State on the recently released district audit, and we also spend time in professional development. I just want to highlight the professional development sessions that we attended were free and of no cost to the district. So and a continuation of engagements that we have planned to do in the next 3 months. So as we go through this, you'll see movement on those previous graphs that were in the previous pages. This next slide, once again, are projects that take substantial amount of time in our department, and we just wanted to make the committee and the board aware of what's going on. We are still working towards having an external assessment, AKA peer review, done this year. That does take some effort getting information for the team that will be auditing us, getting information to them. And that we are also pretty much on point as far as implementing our automated audit management software. And the final slide just gives you a snapshot of the department and our qualifications. And I do have one opening in the last column, the senior internal auditor. It's vacant. President Baker, that concludes my report. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Madam Internal Auditor. Mr. Cole, as Chair of the Audit and Accountability Committee, would you like to share any comments or pose any questions to the Internal Auditor?
Just very briefly, and I thank you so very much for this report. You play such a critical role, and this department plays such a critical role in how our organization views ourselves internally in a way that makes us flexible to solve problems, in a way that makes us improve on our systems and our processes. So thank you so very much for this. I'm happy to answer any questions as well if necessary, but thank you, Madam Auditor.
Questions, colleagues, for the Internal Auditor? So, Madam Internal Auditor, I'll add my gratitude to the Vice Presidents. In government, it's all about continuous improvement, getting better over time, and the Office of Internal Audit helps the district to do that. So we appreciate that. We appreciate your partnership with the other direct reports, the treasurer and the superintendent, and we can't overstate the importance of your function. So thank you, and your team. Thank your team for us as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for the report. All right, let's move on then, if there are no other questions or comments, to the treasurer. Speaking of important people, Mr. Treasurer, would you like to share your report with the board this evening?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
We're here to discuss one of the topics from last week's FAC, Finance and Appropriations Committee meeting, and that happens to be the monthly financial report for March. As has been the case in many of the previous months, revenues year-to-date are running above plan. They came in $31 million under plan this year this month due to some timing issues. However, the year-to-date revenues still remain at above plan, about $43 million or 5% of the original estimates. Expenditures this month came in about $2 million under plan. That increased the favorable, in this case, which is under plan, year-to-date variance to about $13 million. Combined, this then yields a cash balance of about $57 million above plan at the end of March. This marks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the 9th month in a row that the cash balance has exceeded our estimates. We began in July running about $12 million up in cash. And then the next 7 months or 6 months or so, August through December, they ranged anywhere from about $27 million above plan to some $35 million above plan. Mostly, those are the timing issues that occur, and we've explained those at those meetings. Beginning in January, we saw the cash balance climb to about $96 million above plan due to timing of first half property tax collections. And then as the plan caught up with actuals, we decreased that above plan amount to $85 million in February, and then this month we stand at $57 million ahead of plan. Through April thus far, I looked at it right before the meeting, although looking at it mid-month is not terribly reflective because some things are posted and others come in later in the month, but we're still about $40 million ahead of plan on ending cash balance. So that will become a pertinent item to share with you later on as we talked in finance about another item on the agenda. Some of the highlights for the month, getting into actual revenue line items. Very similar to last month, in the property taxes area for revenue, the last month's variance, again, because of property tax advances with settlement coming in March, that variance resolves itself to a favorable plus $4.9 million. That is 0.97% of our estimate year to date at that point. So we're very much on target there. Again, our pilots payment. Pilot stands for payment in lieu of taxes. Those are the payments we receive from property tax cases that we settle outside of the Board of Revision and Board of Tax Appeals. And that's up $13 million year to date to plan. So that's a big contributor to the favorable revenue variances this year. On the expenditure side, personnel continues to run under plan. That under plan has ranged from about $2.3 million back in November when we had that first 3-pay month to this month's high of about $10.2 million year to date under plan. Purchase services continue to lead the way in other expenditures as being under plan, and that's, as we've explained to Finance for the past several months, primarily in the area of tuition and some of the utilities. Those are the ones that we're okay with that running under plan, because you certainly don't want to be short for budgeting for utilities or tuition. Kind of a graphical look at those variances. As you can see here, property taxes very much on plan. State aid, about $833 million under plan, or 0.3% under plan. I actually turned some of these variances around to make it sound perhaps a little bit more positive. On property taxes, we are 99.03% on plan, so that's very, very close. State aid, 99.7% on plan. All other revenue seems to be the area that we're achieving at least a rather large dollar amount, being up about $40 million. Since it's such a small budget, I guess small is relative, and so relative to all the other categories, all of the revenues are about double what we had in plan. But when we get into looking at those, you'll see that one of them, property tax allocation, that is really a very large timing variance. So that's about $18 million, which we expect will resolve itself this coming month as the plan catches up with actual. In the other revenue area, same explanation as the past several months. 3.7 to Medicaid that was received early in the year, but is planned for the May and June timeframe of this fiscal year. That should resolve itself. $5 million investment income year to date, running ahead of plan, and again, the big contributor, $13 million in pilots. Just another look and give you the perspective on this. You can see that of our two major sources of revenue, or 91% of our revenue, property tax and state aid, they total about $778 million year to date on $774 million planned, and so we're within 0.52% on those two major revenue sources. So on 91% of the income year to date, we're within 0.52% on receiving our projected numbers. Overall, factoring out the variances due to the property tax allocation, which I said would resolve itself, as well as Medicaid, we're at about plus $24 million, or within 2.8% year to date of our estimates. So I'm pleased that revenues are coming in above plan, but it's not an egregious number above plan. And we're taking all of these variances into account as we prepare the forecast. On the expenditure side, I'm going to begin with deductions for charter, STEM, and vouchers, which is the middle set of bars here in the graph. It's now about $690,000 under plan on about $143 million in revenue. That's 0.5% under plan. Not terribly noteworthy, but we're on target there again. All other expenditures in the aggregate are about 3% under plan, or $2.4 million. I'll give you some details on the other expenditures in a minute, primarily in the area of purchase services. Personnel is under plan, $10 million year to date, as I noted before. Shared with the committee, and I share with you this graph of the month-to-month variances as well as the cumulative year to date. You can see the blue bars are the monthly variances, most months coming in under plan, but that three-pay month of November coming in above plan, and the corresponding impact on year-to-date variances. The next three-pay month is June, so we won't know how that works out. I suspect that because we had some issues with how we allocated to the 3-month plan, so we may be over planned for June, but it should all work itself out for us to be under plan for the year. Our last pay of the year is on the last day of the year, so we'll know that last week. So that'll be just information that you'll hear about in August or September when we get out to reporting the year-end results. In the other revenue area, you can see purchase services stands out here. And as I said, tuition and utilities, we like to conservatively budget for those items. Another breakout, just a different picture on give you that perspective. Personnel being 66% of our budget, and charter is 22% of the budget, charter, vouchers, and STEM deductions, STEM schools deductions. On that, 88% of our revenues were within 1.9%, running about 11 million under plan. On all the remaining expenditure categories, about 12% of our overall expenditures were at 2.4 million or 3% under plan. So I'm pretty pleased that we're on target, yet it does yield an increase in the cash balance that was planned of that 57 million that I mentioned earlier. So to close for March, kind of the same story as in all the previous months. Revenues are above plan, expenditures are below plan, and we've built a cash balance to carry forward into future years. Other items on the Finance Committee agenda that evening, that late afternoon, we did review the bond resolution that's before you this evening that's going to authorize the issuance of the remaining $50 million of Operation Fix-It bonds that were approved and authorized by the voters in November of 2016. As you might recall, we issued $75 million in the January-February timeframe of 2017 to fund approximately the first 3 years of those expenditures. This will give us the authority now to issue those bonds. I anticipate that action to take place somewhere in the September-October timeframe as the balances in the Operation Fix-It Fund are spent down and dwindle to a level where we're going to need to have an infusion of cash to fund the next series of planned expenditures in that area. We also heard from some department directors. Budget Director Gooding brought them in to explain some updates and revisions to their requests for 2020 that weren't previously heard, so the committee heard about those, and those items will be included along with all the other 2020 budget requests in the appropriation resolution for that fiscal year that you'll see in June of this year, and then we've incorporated those requests in the 5-year forecast. Next item on the agenda was a continuing discussion about capital funding, how we spend capital dollars, and primarily we've been discussing sources of capital funding. Some of the previous discussions included, for instance, the 2016 PI, Permanent Improvement Levy, the $500,000 that was approved, how much money that generates and where does that go, the Operation Fix-It, our sale of building funds and things like that as sources of revenue. We also had a discussion at one meeting about OSFC funding, or I guess it's OFCC now, and the concept of funded seats versus co-funded seats versus non-funded seats and the efficient use of those seats from a capital funding standpoint. And then at this meeting, we got off on a very current topical funding need, and that is that realignment of the Dominion North and Brookhaven programs and buildings. Saw an initial estimate of what that would take to do those programs. Alex Trevino and his team presented some cost estimates there. There looks to be initially around $30 million of a request to be funded for that project. The reason why it's timely is because the summer is coming up. Those programs need to be realigned for the coming school year, and so we were, I guess you could say, in search of a funding source. It was my recommendation to the committee, and ultimately I'll make a recommendation to the board at a later meeting, that as a result of our favorable results in the general fund, you have the $30 million available there, and that for this one-time cash expenditure, it would be my recommendation to the board to make a transfer out of the general fund to fund those expenditures. We put them in a separate fund so that they stay available for that purpose, because this will take a year to 2 years to effectuate those improvements that we need to put into place the action that the board approved, I believe in December, to realign those programs. So we made that presentation and had some discussion about that. And lastly, and certainly not least, the committee heard the first presentation on the 5-year forecast and what the outlook is there and what some of the major variables are that are not new to us in terms of variables that can dramatically affect the financial outlook for the district, not the least of which is the state binding budget that that we're in. So that does, I think, a pretty good summary of what we talked about at the committee. Certainly more conversation to come. This board will see the 5-year forecast at its first meeting in May. 2 weeks later, at the second meeting in May, you'll be asked to approve that 5-year forecast. And all of this information is out on the FAC website for anybody who would like to see it. If you have questions, you can get in touch with me, or you can talk with FAC Chair, Board Member Cole, if you like. So that's it for the Finance Committee report, and I'll be glad to answer any questions on that or the monthly financial report that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. And Vice President Cole, as FAC Chair, do you have any comments?
Just a short comment that I was very pleased, particularly with the request for additions on things relative to academic services, that there's a right and strong focus in that direction, particularly with literacy. I was also encouraged by the focus on not only PD, but also R&D, professional development and research and development. We've got an amazing committee in that of innovation and reform, and this administration has really been looking entrepreneurially at how do we improve our organization in terms of building capacity with our staff, increasing our capacity in learning in the classroom, and seeing the results in years to come. So I was very encouraged by those things. Yes.
Thank you very much. Other comments or questions on the Treasurer's report? Colleagues? Board Member Gibbs?
Two. First, on your slide on personnel, where we're talking about our expenditures, I believe, I think it's slide 7, and under personnel, we are $10 million under plan. So my question is, if we're $10 million under plan, are we fully staffed in the classrooms and where we need to be staffed? We're almost at the end of the year, but we're $10 million under plan, but are we staffed fully where we're supposed to be staffed? Do we have everybody in full-time positions that's supposed to be there, or are there places that still have subs, that don't have people hired? I wonder when we get to this part of the year, are there still positions open, or is this a good projection of where we are, or are there still positions not filled? I don't know who takes that. That's administration or
Madam Superintendent, I think I'll call on you for that, and you may delegate it to whomever you deem appropriate.
Yeah. If I'm clear about your question, you as of today, are we staffed for next year?
No, are we fully staffed this year? We're ending the year with, and I know our treasurer is very fiscally conservative, so I get that. I know you're tight. But my question is, and I'm okay with that, but is this an accurate portrayal of what the cost would be if we fully staff, if every position was filled?
And if I may just point clarification, I think what you're asking about is how much of this variance is due to my conservative nature in forecasting versus our execution of the employment plan or the HR plan. That's really the question. And my answer to that is, I assume that we're employing those, and that's an assumption on my part. I don't go check with HR to say, where are we on staffing, so that I actually calculate, gee, we, had some vacancies, I planned for a full year on this position, but they're only going to be here because we hired them later in the year. They're going to be here for 8 months instead of 12 months. I'm not that fine in that. So part of it, as you said, is my conservative nature in forecasting, so that we can allow some wiggle room there. But the actual, are we fully staffed at any one particular time, is not a question I can answer. I would turn to somebody on the other side of the house for that.
Yeah, we can follow up with that with someone from HR.
I think that's something to come back. I just want to make sure
Okay.
I understand that as we get ready to get into forecast season, that we have an accurate portrayal of what is a sufficient amount to project in personnel to be fully staffed at all levels. So that's that question. My second one is around the what do we call it? The realignment or the facilities piece, and the price tag of the almost $30 million. and using those dollars out of general as opposed to our traditional capital outlay or coming out of the capital fund. I know you mentioned that, but I would like to find some time to discuss that in detail outside of a board meeting and to have an opportunity to lay out those numbers, what that would cost, the time frame projected. I think that's a good conversation, but I don't want it to be rushed inside the parameters of a board meeting. I would really want President Baker and to my colleagues would want to know if you would be interested in having a bit of a work session about it so we can fully understand this funding model and this strategy as well as the work that's projected and the time frame. And we understand that that was a very heavy list and it was a very long process, but I definitely don't want to get to this point and rush it and try to do it fast and not do it right and not do it well. So I think having that conversation would help me understand better the strategy to do that so close to the levy and so close to what we know from our parents are pressing issues, right? And we heard from our community. So I just offer that to my board colleagues.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. So I spoke earlier today actually with the treasurer and the committee chair and suggested that we do have a work session. And so what I'd like to do is ask the treasurer and the chair to work with staff to try to plan something fairly quickly. We do have a bit of a time constraint in that we know that some of these moves will happen as soon as next school year.
If we choose.
And so if we do that, then we need to make some improvements this summer. So having said that, we will plan a work session, and any board member who's interested in attending, I would encourage you to do that. We can have a more thorough discussion and see the presentation from Mr. Trevino's staff on the numbers.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Board Member Ragland.
Yes, President Baker, we have a retreat that is already scheduled and upcoming. Could we add this to the agenda of the retreat? Understanding that we will all be together for the retreat and understanding the scheduling challenges that have caused delays in the past, it might be prudent to add some time to that retreat in order to accomplish this goal in the time that you articulated we needed to accomplish.
Board Member Ragland, thank you. I will, based on the agenda that we've already agreed upon for that retreat, I'm already suggesting board members bring their sleeping bags. So I'm not sure that adding this, which I think deserves time to have its own ample, thorough discussion, I'm not sure adding it onto that night would behoove us. However, if we're not able to identify a date, which I hope we will be able to, then that may be an option. Mr. Brown.
Yes, thank you. I'm concerned a little bit about what I'm hearing. I'm very comfortable with the decisions that we've made. I'm very comfortable that we've had the information necessary to make all of those decisions. And we need to proceed with that. I think in large part, the decisions were unnecessarily delayed from August, September until January. Now I hear Ms. Gibbs' suggestion about if at all, meaning getting started with this so that it can be ready to go for the next school year, which is a decision that's already been made. If she has a question specific to whether the $30 million in capital, which is available on a temporary basis from operating funds because we have that cash right now, and then that can be answered. It's been answered to my satisfaction, and I think we need to proceed with this. I don't think that it requires a workshop or a retreat. I don't think that it requires any delay. I think that moving forward with the project as we've agreed to is very important. Board Member Brown, thank you. I appreciate that. I
I do, however, believe that it is a good idea to host a work session just to talk through, not the decisions we've already made, because we've made those decisions. And so we're not going to relitigate those unless you all suggest otherwise, but I don't think so. But I do think having a work session to talk through how we got to the number, especially since it is general funds, I think that's important. And you can choose not to attend if you're already comfortable. That's fine.
Yeah, let me, if I could just respond.
If we could have Mr. Brown finish.
Just in terms of if we're not going back to revisit the fundamental decision that was made in January, that's fine, and I understand that we need to proceed, and I would hope that this work session not delay proceeding in that fashion. Beyond that, with respect to the question of where we pay for that, to be able to get started now, I know that was vetted pretty thoroughly at the Finance Committee that Mr. Cole chaired. And there was a good discussion there and a good presentation by Mr. Bohorak. And that was resolved and now comes to us as a recommendation, a unanimous recommendation from the Finance Committee. So, I certainly understand having a question about that, for anybody that wasn't present at the meeting. But, I don't think that that is something that needs to result in a great deal more work.
Thank you. Duly noted. Board Member Gibbs?
Thank you, President Baker, and thank you for those comments, Board Member Brown. But your satisfaction doesn't feed the common knowledge. And so what I hope you heard from me say was, we need to be very transparent as we've been in this entire process. And if we're going to spend the $28 million in a way that's different than we've done before, I'm glad you had a committee meeting, but everybody as a board has not heard all of that information in detail. So, and I invite the chair or Mr. Bohorak to present all that information for the board, because the entire board has to vote on the appropriation. And as we fast approach the hard deadline of the 5-year forecast, this communication and understanding what we're voting on from a financial standpoint is the due diligence and the responsibility of the entire board. We're not litigating our decision. We've made that, but we need to be very clear, and we need to understand as board members, as well as the general public, of what this price tag is. Everybody got to the grocery store and put something in the cart. When it's time to ring it up and pay for it, which we'll have to do with our vote, I don't want anybody to have buyer's remorse, because everybody wanted to move and where they wanted to go. But now it's time to pay the price tag, and I'm okay with that. I just want to understand the decision. I want to understand what the costs are, and that is what I want. If you're comfortable, as board member said, I appreciate that, but I want the ability and believe as a board member to hear all of the information that was presented at FAC, and I think it will give me, and probably some of the general public, a greater understanding of how we came to the decision, how it's going to be used, and how it will impact the next round of facility master plan in the new building program, and would these upgrades push these buildings back on being renovated or rebuilt. And so those are some of the questions I think are too lengthy for a board meeting. And so that type of time, I think, for us and the general public, that type of transparency, I think, will go a long way.
And thank you. And so, colleagues, I would ask that if you do have specific questions that you'd like to make sure are addressed at the work session, please do send those to the treasurer, and he will track those for us if he doesn't mind doing that.
The dates?
No.
Questions?
Questions.
Okay,
yes.
I'm thinking about dates, I'm sorry, and timing.
We'll get to that later. All right, thank you very much, colleagues. I appreciate that, and we'll have a more thorough discussion at that work session. Thank you very much. Anything else from you, Mr. Treasurer?
No, sir, that's it. That concludes my report. Thank you very much.
Appreciate your report. Thank you very much. Let's move on then to our consent agenda. Colleagues, is there a motion that we accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Moved and
Second.
Moved and seconded. Colleagues, any questions or comments on any piece of legislation contained within the consent agenda this evening? I do know there may be an abstention that I was advised of in advance. And if there's nothing from the board, Mr. Treasurer, would you mind calling the roll?
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs? Yes. Mr. Ragland?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Had to
Left. I'm sorry, my bad. Ms. Adair?
Yes,
Pres-
with the exception of 17.1, which I abstained.
Abstain? And President Baker?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues. Let's move on to announcements. I'll go first, and I'll be brief. I'll ask Mr. Brown, Mr. Paul Brown, excuse me, to offer up some photographs. You've already seen some of these. The superintendent shared some of these, so that's Sankofa. We can skip over that. Great event. And next is the I Know I Can reception, another great event. And you all recognize Bob Weiler in the middle there, former member of this board, one of the founders of I Know I Can. Next, Mr. Brown. So skip this one. So there was the Council of the Great City Schools had its Chief Operating Officer Conference in Columbus a week or so ago. And I want to recognize Mr. Oldham, who along with a number of our staff members attended the conference. So there were hundreds of COOs and their team leaders from across the country who converged on Columbus for this conference put on by the Council of the Great City Schools. We were represented very well. I want to recognize Mr. Oldham for his service to the district and the way you performed at the conference along with your staff. It's all about leadership. So let's congratulate Mr. Oldham. That concludes my announcements. Anything else, colleagues? Mr. Brown.
Just very briefly, there is a program coming up this week on Thursday that I had passed along to administration for some distribution. It's the start of City of Columbus Community Relations Commission Lunch and Learn programs, and this for the season. And this one happens to be, I think, very timely and needed and important. It's discrimination and the truth behind trauma in our neighborhoods. It's a focus on LGBT community in part. I know they are bringing down an administrator from from Cleveland City Schools. Don't know, I'm guessing that our superintendent knows this person. I don't have the name in front of me. But I know some invitations have been sent out. Some of our counselors may attend. There's no cost to it.
Great. Thank you very much.
It's noon on, it's 11 a.m. on Thursday.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Board Member Gibbs.
Yes, thank you. Two things. First, tomorrow we will have our community information session. If you are interested in serving on the Innovation and Reform or the Board External Monitoring Committee, I want to thank our communications team for putting it out on social media. We will be here tomorrow, which is Wednesday, April 17th, from 5:30 p.m. to about 7 p.m. down here in the Assembly Room. And you can come and find out about both of those committees, the roles that they play, and how you can get involved and what the application process will be. So tomorrow, Wednesday, April 17th, 5:30 p.m., here in the Assembly Room at 270 East State Street. And it's for Board External and the Innovation and Reform Committee. But colleagues, if you have any information on your committee that you would like to bring for those to consider getting involved in, NSDP or Policy and Review Committee, Board Member Brown, or any of our other committees, you can bring your information and have that available. So definitely want to invite people to that. And secondly, I want to announce that Delta Sigma Theta sorority is sponsoring the Dr. Alexa Kennedy Conference for future doctors and dentists. And the theme is Fight Like a Girl. So if you have a young lady in grades 6 through 10 that is interested in becoming a doctor, a dentist, or a PhD in a medical field, the information is on the website. We partner with Columbus City Schools to have young ladies to attend this conference. It is free of charge, and you can visit the website. It's a 3-day program that starts off with a weekend retreat and a conference day on Tuesday, May 7th. I'll be a little late to the board meeting, but they'll get to visit doctors and women of color at all the major hospital systems and those in private practice. So you can go on the website to find out about that. That's all. Thank you, President Baker.
Thank you, Board Member Gibson. You did say that was the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Inc., right? Very good. Absolutely. Great partnership. Thank you. Any other announcements, colleagues? Yes, Board Member Adair.
All right, is that okay?
Of course, please.
All right, so Superintendent Dixon talked about the event that I was at, but I just wanted to say that those students at the MLK Oratorical did an amazing job, and we should be proud because our students in a statewide competition took first place in 3 of the 4 categories, which is pretty amazing. And my point of pride is because we've recognized the students, and they deserve a lot because they got up there, and in all of the competitions, the poetry slam, and everything that's been out there, I really want to say thank you to our teacher coaches who work with the students, and to their parents who, went with them and cheered them on. I think the best part of it was, it was one of our 3rd place winner in one of the groups. The teacher was the most excited person in the room. She ran to the front taking pictures, and the pride on her face to watch her student, just everybody, it was such a joy. And so thank you, teachers and parents, for supporting our students who get up there and really show our success.
Absolutely. Amazing things coming out of Columbus City Schools. You don't have that sort of amazing success out of a failing school district. So let's point to those successes whenever we can. Any other comments, announcements? All right, seeing none, I'll ask the Vice President to offer a resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Board of Education recess into executive session per Section 121.22 G1 Ohio Revised Code to consider the employment or compensation of public employees, and Section 121.22 G4 Ohio Revised Code to prepare for, conduct, or review negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning the compensation or the terms and conditions of their employment. Mr. President.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
Vice President Cole.
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs? Yes. Mr. Ragland?
Yes.
Ms. Adair? Yes. President Baker? Yes. Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. The board will now recess into executive session. We will adjourn from those chambers without returning to these. Thank you for being here this evening. Have a good night.